Welcome to Scrolling to Death. I'm Nikki, and today I am joined by Rose Bronstein. Rose, you and your family founded Buckets Over Bullying, a Chicago-based nonprofit whose mission is to stop the cyberbullying of children and teens through education, lawmaking, and legal action. So, Rose, you got into this work after losing your son, Nate. And can you tell listeners about your family's experience with cyberbullying?
Of course. First, I want to thank you for having me.
Of course.
Well, what happened to my son was he was a sophomore in high school at the Latin School of Chicago. He transferred there his sophomore year. And so he was new to the school that year. And again, I feel like it's been so long already. This was still pandemic time. So, like myself and many other parents, we were scrambling, trying to find in in schooling, like being in a classroom. Like
Absolutely. Me too.
I was doing anything I could to get all my kids, get him out of the basement, off the Xbox, and into the classroom again. So
Right.
at that point in time, the Latin school had made a formal announcement in the spring of that year that they were eliminating Zoom and that they would be open for business in the fall and would be in person. So that was the precipitous as to why we transferred him to Latin. There was no other reason other than that. He had agreed to it. He said it's fine. I'm sure it's not a big deal. The school that he was at previous to that is a mile away, so he would still be friends with his current friends. At the time, it just seemed very logical and very benign, and here we are today. So when he got to the Latin school, there was other forms of bullying as well. The online bullying hadn't hit yet, so it was kind of built up, but he arrived and he was being ostracized, excluded. Kids were making plans around him and not including him. He wasn't onboarded correctly at all. I had asked the school to provide him like a buddy when he got there to kind of help him acclimate. So as time was going on, he was feeling all of this. It didn't even start well. And he was coming home and upset about the interactions that he was having with students at school, very negative interactions.
Right.
So this is a case of bullying online and offline. And one thing I also want to point out to parents is that offline bullying, when children are excluding each other purposely or purposely going out of their way not to make them feel welcome or included, that is bullying. It's not up for debate anymore, because there is an intent to harm another child's feelings or their sense of belonging in the school. And there are a lot of parents out there who, when they're approached about in-person bullying, they'll deny that those types of actions are bullying, and they are. Spreading rumors about a fellow student is bullying. Making sure that that student doesn't feel welcome, it's bullying. It's all bullying. So then in December is when the cyberbullying hit. It was all over a basketball game. My son was on the JV basketball team at the Latin School of Chicago. And it all started because he was accused of posting a W on Instagram, implying that the opposing school was winning the basketball game, and that upset the Latin school teammates. Until this day, we don't know who posted this W, but my son has been blamed for it. And so in a mob mentality over a text message thread with the entire JV basketball team on it, these bullies started attacking my son on text. That's how it started. They were swearing at him. They were threatening him. They were humiliating him. One bully took a picture of my son at the game in the lobby and posted it on the text thread and made a threatening, derogatory statement towards him. As the hours went on through the night, we can see on the text that he had asked them to stop. He had apologized. It's like, please leave me alone. You're all taking this too far. I've already said I was sorry. And he was saying he was sorry for something he said he didn't do. He said that somebody else posted this W from his phone. Because my son is not here anymore, we'll never get the answer, because the bullies are, they're till this day, they're not being honest about what happened, and they never will. And then the following evening, a member from the varsity basketball team at the Latin school decided to get in on it. And this is where it got even worse. He created a Snapchat message with his face on it, with his middle finger in the air, from his bedroom. So he's clearly identifiable, with derogatory statements and threats. And he posted it to his Snapchat account. And there were other basketball players in his house with him. They had all colluded to do this together. And then as he posted it, other students picked it up, added more insults, more threats, posted it on their account. And so that's how it started to go viral. So what we know, based on the information that we've been able to gather from the students only, is we know of 6 students who grabbed it. Every time a student grabbed it, they would add another insult, excuse me, or another threat, or whatever it is they felt like saying to my son, and reposting it. So it went viral through the school, and it even went outside of the school, and it circulated throughout the city of Chicago to other schools. One of the bullies who decided to jump in on it, he told us that he only sent it to 200 of his friends.
Only 200.
And when this is a 15-year-old boy at the time, because now they're almost turning 18. So in his mind, think about like the lack of empathy, the lack of awareness, the lack of anything, right? Like what's going on in that brain. In his mind, it was justifiable to him that only 200 friends was not a big deal. When I heard that, I know my heart stopped, and he just, it was like shrugging it off, like, just 200 of my friends, what's the big deal?
Wow.
And he also claimed that it was, when he was asked, why did you do this to Nate Bronstein, his answer was that it was his adrenaline. Again, no empathy, no accountability, no stopping and thinking, before deciding to attack somebody.
Right.
So in that Snapchat, there was an emoji on there that implied to smoke my son's ashes. Till this day, we don't know who posted it. So I don't know if the bullies are covering for this kid or whomever, but nobody will own up to it, of course. And there's a lot of language and acronyms on there that imply physical harm, imply danger. And when we finally got a copy of that snap, 2 weeks after we had lost our son to suicide, we didn't know what any of it meant. We had to look it up because kids are using slang and acronyms to imply these types of messaging to get around it. So when I saw what all of these things meant, we had to go on Urban Dictionary to look it up again. Like my heart just stopped. And the fact that my son was seeing all this being directed towards him, I don't have the words. And then we also know that another student from the Latin School of Chicago who was on the JV basketball team sent him a Snapchat message directing him to go kill himself.
On Snapchat.
Correct, on Snapchat. And so I'm sure you've heard these stories over and over again. Snapchat and TikTok, but Snapchat, because of its disappearing message feature, these children feel so emboldened to attack each other on this platform because they feel protected by the disappearing message feature. They think, oh, I can say whatever I want, do whatever I want, because the message will disappear. No one's going to catch me.
Right. And how is that good to encourage people to message something that goes away? I don't understand the positive benefit of that feature.
There is none. We've been asking Snapchat forever to remove it. So Snapchat is marketing their platform to children,
Right.
right? And it's appealing to children, and it gives them the opportunity to behave like animals towards each other, to harm each other through Snapchat because they feel comfortable enough to do so, because in their mind they know the message disappears, so that there's no trail.
And they also have a harassment policy that I pulled. It states, as a baseline, our policies protect all members of our community from demeaning, defamatory, or discriminatory content and advances. So
Correct.
you say kids are finding their way around it by using slang words. Well, that's Snapchat's responsibility to understand what the kids mean by these things. That's their responsibility.
They take none, and what you read from their website is a lie. So for example, when kids suicide bait each other, they're using KYS as the
Right.
acronym for kill yourself. They're
Right.
using emojis. They're saying things like unalive yourself, I want to see you 6 feet under, things to get around it. Regardless, though, it doesn't matter in what format or how it's communicated. At the end of the day, Snapchat is doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. And after this happened and we found out about it, we lost our son on January 13th of 2022. And exactly 2 weeks later, on the 27th of January, finally, a parent and a student came forward to me to tell me that my son had been attacked online. We had no clue. She brought me screenshots of the snap.
Wow.
She brought me screenshots of the text thread. The school, the Latin School of Chicago, went out of their way to cover it up. My son had reported that he was being attacked on Snapchat. Get this, on December 13th, 2021, it was a Monday.
To the school.
To the school, he went into the office and met with the dean of students. He followed the protocol. She is responsible. By the way, she still works there. She is responsible for handling, the kids are told, if you need to report bullying, you go to this dean. So now we know that on Sunday night, December 12th, my son sent an email to the dean saying, I'm being cyberbullied online through Snapchat. I'm very angry. I don't like it. It's going around behind my back. Latin always says that this is not acceptable and no one should be treated this way. What are you going to do about it? Excuse me.
No problem.
So we know that she scheduled a meeting with him for the next day at 11 a.m. in the morning. I skipped a part. In his email, he attached a screenshot of the Snapchat. So it's very clear on that email. You can identify 3 students right away. It's not negotiable. The picture of the student who was emboldened enough to have his face on there, and 2 account names at the top. So when kids screenshot a Snapchat, their names show up at the top, and then it actually is time stamped too, like 58 seconds, 42 seconds. So when he submitted that report, he had clearly identified 3 abusers, 3 bullies already. Okay. So now forwarding to Monday, he has a meeting with her. We don't know exactly what happened because the school refuses to share. We don't know exactly what was interchanged face to face. She claimed to my son that she would take care of it. And we also know that she blamed him for it in an email, putting the blame on him, victim blaming him for receiving the attacks. And they claim that he said to the dean, do not tell my parents about this. And so the school decided that they were going to go with that and not notify us. There's a law in Illinois, a bullying policy in Illinois, that states when a child reports an incident of bullying or cyberbullying, parents need to be notified. So
that was already in place?
That was already in place.
Wow.
school broke the law. So Monday at 11 a.m., my son meets with her. At 1 o'clock p.m. that same Monday, he gets attacked again through the text thread by another bully. My son's picture was hanging at a restaurant down the street from our house because he and his friend gave it to the manager and they hung up their pictures there, like they were proud of the fact that they were like the best customers. They were literally there every single day. The managers and the people that worked at the restaurant knew my son by name. Um, so as a pride thing and as like a joke, they hung their pictures there and put number one customer on that. They thought it was cute. We thought it was cute.
Yeah.
And there's more behind it. When my husband was in college, he had his picture up on a wall at a restaurant that he went to every day. So my son was modeling what my husband had done when he was in college.
Yeah.
The reason why I tell you that is that this bully was at that barbecue restaurant that day and saw the picture of my son, took a picture with his phone of the picture of my son, posted it on the text thread, and made a humiliating and derogatory statement about my son's picture up there on that Monday. So he got hit again. And when I saw that on the text thread, I wanted to crumple to the floor. It is so mean. It is so intentionally harmful. There is nothing funny about it. And again, when that kid was sat down, he said, I was just trying to be funny. And he doesn't even know my son. They weren't even friends. So I'm bringing that up because a lot of kids who cyberbully and then when they're asked, why do you do it? Their knee-jerk response is, I was just trying to be funny. No.
It's not funny.
No. None of this is funny. So then this is at 1 o'clock on Monday. My son had to take a math final at 2 o'clock that day. It was the last week of school. I can't even imagine him trying to go take his math final and wrap up the semester after having been targeted again in front of 20 kids. He came home that day, and we only know this because we had all of his electronics go through forensics after the fact. At 5 o'clock that day, he was searching suicide on Google. And then we lost him exactly a month later. The school never notified us.
I'm so sorry, Rose. I've never heard of such vicious behavior towards other humans. And these are teenage kids.
Correct.
Having no understanding of the impact of how they're treating somebody else. Is this what you're seeing now now that you're working in other schools? Is this normal high school kid behavior? Or
yes, this from what I'm seeing now, because our children are so desensitized to this type of behavior that they think this is normal behavior online. So yes, I've been going into Chicago area schools with the Organization for Social Media Safety. We have brought them in Illinois to provide schools with cyber safety education, specifically how to stay safe on social media. Every time I walk into a school, there's at least one student who comes up to me to report to me something that they have experienced or something that they are actually experiencing in the moment. And the things that they tell me, I first recoil, and they're shaking, they're sweating. I mean, they are in fear of their own safety because they can't rein it in. They feel helpless and hopeless. I've had kids come up to me and say, I was told to kill myself on, so-and-so platform. I had a boy come up to me earlier this month that he was being cyberbullied on Discord, and that a group of kids were sending him bestiality photos, and he didn't know what to do. And I said, did you report it? And he said, no, they told me that if I reported it, they would hurt me. They would attack me more online. And so not only are these kids cyberbullying each other, but then they're putting the fear into the victim, saying, if you report it, we're going to retaliate against you harder. And so the victim doesn't even know what that means, what that looks like, but it puts so much fear into them that they stay quiet. And again, I don't know, but I have a feeling that one of the reasons my son didn't report it to us is there could have been someone who either threatened him or he thought that if he spoke out, he would have been retaliated against even more.
And I'm sure you know most kids don't tell their parents, almost all, when they're being
Most
cyberbullied.
kids, and that's been documented, most kids who are being cyberbullied do not tell their parents. Do not tell their parents. And that's why the adults in the room, the fact that the Latin School of Chicago broke the law and went ahead with, well, this 15-year-old who's a minor is telling us not to tell his parents, we're going to go with that. I mean, there's just no excuse. It's just the most egregious, negligent form of decision making and behavior that I've never thought in my lifetime I would ever come across, and it cost my family, my son's life.
There's failures across the board. The social media companies, those wholly owned platforms have a responsibility, not a legal liability too, but a moral responsibility to be monitoring for cyberbullying, suicide encouragement, like
Correct.
all of these things. It's so wrong across the board. How do you think we got
Yes.
here? Like people have been bullied forever. Bullying has been a thing everyone's had to deal with, right? But you add on the online element and it is so much more dangerous and harmful behind the screen.
Well, I think, first of all, children should not be on social media. Again,
Okay.
we're using the word children.
Yes.
And myself being the first, I'm Generation X. So Gen X, we're the first group of parents who've raised children on social media. We were actually like chosen to be the first generation of parents and children to be part of a social human experiment without even asking us if we want to be a part of one.
Right.
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 So when I started handing my children cell phones, iPhones, and I know a lot of people feel this way when they were in 5th and 6th grade because they were coming home and saying everyone in my class has a phone and I don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, the first thing was there's a sense of relief. Okay, so when they go to someone's house, I know where they are. I can call
Mm-hmm.
them. When they go to the park, I know where they are. When they walk up the street to get an ice cream cone, it's almost like we felt like we were actually had like this tool to be even safer,
Mm-hmm.
keeping tabs on our kids. But we didn't know that when we started to give them access to social media, they log into Snapchat and they log into Instagram and they make fake Instagram accounts and they're making the TikToks. We think it's cute and funny,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody is watching them. And we didn't realize how dangerous this environment is until what we're seeing now, right?
How would you have known? There was not the research. First of all, Meta and these companies were hiding the data. It's coming out now, hiding the harms from you guys. And I am of the generation that my kids are 8 and under. And so I now see all of this and I am like, hell no, are my kids getting on social media? Devices don't need to happen until I can see a clear reason why they need a device. And even in that case, now we have products available that are stripped down phones. People are using flip phones. Like that to me, that I don't care if you feel left out and all your friends are still communicating on Snapchat. I'm not willing to take that risk.
Agreed. And the problem is what I'm seeing is the overall parent population. I still feel like I'm in the minority,
Yes.
but my child was harmed and my family is forever harmed by this. But there's a lot of parents out there who do not even think or know or care about how harmful social media is to young children. They don't realize that these social media platforms refer to our children as users,
Mm-hmm.
and
Products.
that their goal is to addict our children to become users of our platform,
Right.
right? So a user is defined, there's a cigarette user, a tobacco user, right? An
Mm-hmm.
opioid user,
Right.
a someone who's on a social media platform. Instagram refers to us as users. So
Mm-hmm.
that in itself shows you that they are purposely addicting our children to come back for more.
Mm-hmm.
Snapchat, with the streaks, right? They created these streaks to make sure that our kids stay on Snapchat every single day. And
Mm-hmm.
we all know now how harmful that is to their mental health. We all know now how much it's eroded their ability to empathize with people because they've lost that human to human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have the courage to walk up to their peer in the hallway and say, "Go kill yourself," because most of them intuitively know that's not something that you do. But for
Mm-hmm.
some reason, because they are not going to see the response through Snapchat, they feel comfortable saying, "Go kill yourself" over Snapchat. And so there are parents out there who are handing children cell phones, giving them access to social media without educating themselves on how harmful it is, without putting boundaries and rules around their children, without telling them what the do's and don'ts are,
Mm-hmm.
without putting the platforms on and I'm putting quotes around it, the highest security settings, although again, I think it's still
I agree.
baloney.
Yep.
There needs to be legislation in place to enforce the social media platforms to do this automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And also, all the schools that I've been going to, I've been imploring parents to come together as a community and set community guidelines where all the parents say no child gets a cell phone or access to social media until X age, whether the threshold is eighth grade or
Mm-hmm.
seventh grade or ninth grade. That's the only way to start to shift this like society's perspective on how do we pull back on a dangerous device that parents are giving to children as young as 7, 8 years old.
I know. And they're saying it's a stripped down iPhone, but that doesn't exist. Apple doesn't allow you to strip it down. Kids find the way around it. Um, so I do think that's one of the elements is getting with your community and coming up with shared values and educating yourselves as a group and coming together and setting rules across the board. How do you recommend parents start that conversation? Because moms say to me, I'm nervous to bring this up to other moms because I don't want them to feel like I'm judging them. Uh, so do you have any advice for parents around that?
Um, Start with their school community leaders, right?
Okay.
The
Mm-hmm.
administrators, the principal. I am 100% that. First of all, let me take a step back. First of all, if you're a parent, you need to let go of your insecurities and not worry about what other parents think of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if your goal is to keep your child safe all the time and at school, then have the courage to be like, I don't care what other people say. This is what I want, how I want, how I desire my child's experience in school to be. I want them safe and I
Mm-hmm.
want them out of harm's way, right?
Yeah.
So there are if parents were to approach any school administrator, principal, faculty, and say, we would really like to work together to eliminate cell phones out of the school, I can't imagine a single administrator that would say no.
Mm-hmm.
They actually feel like their hands are tied
Mm-hmm.
because there are parents who are not on board with that.
Yep.
I've spoken with many of them. They see the disruption during the day.
Mm-hmm.
They spend most of their day putting out cyberbullying fires all day long. So putting out negative interactions among their students all day
Mm-hmm.
long. And so they can't even get to what they're really supposed to be doing.
Right.
And so, I'm sure you've seen this too. There are schools across the country who have implemented cell phone bans during the
Yes.
day, and the anecdotal evidence that has come out is great to hear. Kids are self-reporting that they feel less anxious, they're more calm, they're more
Mm-hmm.
focused. Administrators are reporting a shift in the tone inside the four walls of the school. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
only positive anecdotal information is coming from it.
Right. And the people that are fighting back against it are the parents, saying that that's my property, that phone, and you can't touch my property. So it's tricky. I interviewed a teacher a couple weeks ago at a high school, and he said anyone that thinks that a phone ban can be successful is lying to themselves. He says because they leave it to each teacher to be liable to enforce it, and every teacher is doing something different. And teachers are reaching out to me because I did a couple posts on this on Instagram. Teachers are saying, I don't want to be liable. So a lot of schools, if they take the phone, something happens to the phone, the teacher is liable for the cost of that phone. So it is a touchy subject. I agree that kids don't need those phones in class during school time. Do they even need it in the hallways? You know, I think schools that have done phone bans from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., whatever the hours are reporting less cyberbullying and just less issues across the board. So I know enforcement has been an issue, but I think that there's something with this, and I think we need to push on it and figure out how to enforce it correctly.
There are ways. It's just there has to be the will,
Yeah.
right? There has to be the will. And for the liability aspect of it, there's liability with everything, right? So
Yeah.
there's a way around all of these
Excuses.
opinions pushing back
Yeah.
on it. If we really want to get it done, it can get done. You know, there are schools who buy. I know they cost money. Those envelopes
Yep.
that
Lock.
are locked out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, each kid drops one off, it gets locked up for the day, and on their way out, they get it back. If it can be done, I don't know if you've experienced this, but we've been to see a comedian, let's say
Yes.
United Center with like what, I don't know, 20, how many thousands of people,
Mm-hmm.
and that comedian doesn't want anyone to have a phone. They don't want their art to be displayed to the rest of the public. If the United Center can manage getting tens of thousands of people to drop a phone into a zip up bag and has to have it unlocked on their way out,
Yep.
that same system can be implemented in a school of 200 children or 2,000 children.
100%.
There's no excuse. It's just the will. It's just the will of wanting to shift and focus on the safety of our children. This is about child safety. And we're at the point where our kids are in danger all the time. And in a lot of cases, as you know, it's leading to death.
Right. Do you feel like there's an appropriate time to give social media to a teen? I mean, once they're 18, they can free for all use it. So do you feel like we have the responsibility to start introducing it to them and how to use it safely? Or are you like, there's no benefit to social media for anyone?
My personal opinion, for a child, there is no benefit to social media, period. Snapchat, and how do you define a child, or like their age? I mean, we all know that this doesn't develop until they're 26. We know that's not realistic, right?
Yep.
But there are laws. Like, for example, a child is allowed to drive a car at the age of 16, right? They're a child, but we give them, when that's a car is a dangerous piece of equipment and machinery, and it can lead to death as well. But society decided that 16 is an appropriate age that we can all live with, right? You can't vote until you're 18. We all know that. But a child who's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I don't think all it does is damaging their brain, damaging their mental health. In my personal opinion, I think 16 would probably be an okay time to introduce children to access to social media, which is obviously different than like digital technology.
Right.
But to allow a child before the age of 16 onto Snapchat as a free for all, no, it's the same idea. So Snapchat is filled with drug dealers, predators, traffickers, hate speech, cyberbullying. What am I missing? You name the harm. It's on there, right? Our children are exposed to, and TikTok and Instagram. So how is it any different than? And we all let our children on there, and there's no adults. There's no babysitter on Snapchat telling watching these children saying you can't do that, you can't say that. So if you were to transfer that to the real world, right? Let's say Snapchat was a brick and mortar store, or Snapchat was a park, right? And the park had drug dealers on every corner, sex traffickers, adults trying to, predators,
Mm-hmm.
signs everywhere on the trees with hate speech, derogatory statements, and telling kids to go kill themselves. Would we as parents just drop our kids off at the park or let them walk into that store with us just without any at all, number one, or even with supervision?
I mean, it
I mean,
sounds
the answer,
ridiculous.
yeah, the answer is no. No, like no parent would say, yes, I would. That's essentially what we have done in the online world, in the digital space. All of those things are happening and nobody's watching. We can't, how you, we cannot watch them. It's not possible to watch them.
Right.
And the social media platforms, they're saying, not my problem. We're just providing an environment, but
Mm-hmm.
you are all on your own. Whatever happens to you on in our environment, not our problem.
Mm-hmm. So the solution could be kids are not allowed on social media.
Kids are not allowed on social media, and there should be like a nationwide agreement
Movement.
with the
Yes.
adults in the room, the
Right.
adults, notwithstanding what big tech has to say, even though they say, the age 13, I still think that's too young. There needs to be a disruption in the status quo and needs to come from the parents because we're the
Mm-hmm.
ones that have to deal with this, to come to an agreement and to lobby and make demands that these laws be put in place, to protect our children. Unless this is never going to end. It's never going to end.
No, and I just feel like if every parent hears this story, if every parent knows the data, they would all make the same decision that their kids should not be on social media. Yet a lot of parents do know some of this and still are deciding that it's okay. It's not going to happen to their kid.
It's
Um,
not going to happen to my kid.
their kid would never bully anyone else, never my kid.
That is what I was told by the parents that I approached when my son was in distress. Your child
Mm-hmm.
is harming my son. My child would never do that. He said he didn't do it. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Not my
Mm-hmm.
child, my child. Really, there's not a single child who doesn't lie. When they are harming another child, it's a 100% chance that they are not owning up to it. And when
Right.
I go into schools and I speak to parents, that is the first thing I say to them. I said, I need you all to be open to the fact that if you are approached by another parent who you can tell is in distress, and they're telling you that their child is in distress because of the behavior of your child, please stop assuming that your child is an angel, that your child didn't do it. So that's why they're called children. That's why it's our responsibility to teach them and to guide them and to hold them
Mm-hmm.
accountable. They are going to behave badly. They are going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and when they do, they need the accountability will teach them not to do that again. But there are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of parents who double down on their kids' atrocious behavior instead of looking at as a teaching moment and a learning lesson for them
Yeah.
to learn how to move forward and not do it again. What happened to my son could have been a very good teaching moment for all those children if the school would have done the right thing. But instead, because they didn't, because they turned a blind eye and chose to brush it under the rug, it turned into a suicide tragedy and it, it destroyed it's destroyed my life and my family's life. I always think, imagine if that dean of students would have called me on Monday, December 13th at 3:30, the end of the day, and said, your son came in this morning to report cyberbullying. I have an email. He asked us not to tell you, but we know that this is, I can tell that he was upset. So why don't we schedule something for tomorrow? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Like she
if
has a legal
just,
right to do.
if just that,
Right.
again, I say would have, could have, should have. If she would have just done that in itself, you and I would,
Mm-hmm.
the trajectory of my life and my son's life would have been completely different.
Mm-hmm. And so schools have a legal right to notify. Is it like in Oregon where not just the parent of the victim, but the parent of the aggressors? So
Yes,
both should
it's
have been
different in
notified.
every state. In
It's different. Okay.
Illinois,
Okay.
this again, each state, some states don't have bullying policies at all, which is hurt. which is completely horrific to even think
Right.
about. But each state has its own. In Illinois, at that time, the policy said you notify the parent of the victim and the parent of the aggressors. The school claimed to have notified one parent, the parent of the kid whose face was on the Snapchat, but she minimized it. She just said there was an incident with your son and another son, but we worked it out. That's what we were told. Again, I don't know how true it is or not.
Mm-hmm.
And this mother was like, okay, that's not how you handle it, because
No.
after what her son, so she had no clue. She had no clue how horrific, what an animal, how her son behaved like an animal. She had no clue.
Right. So she couldn't even have
Um,
a learning moment either with her son because she didn't have the
exactly.
correct information.
Right. If she would have had the correct information, I would assume she would have sat him down and said, let me see your phone. We need to call the school. We need to meet with the Bronsteins. We need to get this straightened out.
Right. Like any responsible parent should do.
But that doesn't seem to be the case, especially all these children who are choosing to take their lives after being cyberbullied. It's always the parents of the perpetrators who deny, deflect, um, do not hold their own children accountable for the behavior, and same with the schools, right? They victim
Mm-hmm.
blame the victim and they protect the bullies. It's just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Every case that I hear about, or every family that I've talked to who has been victimized in the same way, our stories, our tragedies are exactly the same. We have the same list of events. It literally is just plug in another family. It's like just a different cast of characters, but the storyline is exactly the same.
So let's talk about breaking that chain. So, as parents and listeners of this podcast are mostly parents who are worried about social media, what should we be telling our younger kids? I mean, any age, but in my case, my younger kids are going to deal with bullying. What should I be telling them to encourage them to treat their friends with respect, their fellow students with respect?
Both online and offline, with
Yeah.
respect, with empathy. One thing that we're finding when we're in schools is that children are not being upstanders. So when they see another peer or classmate being bullied or cyberbullied, they're staying quiet. They're just watching it and they're not reporting it, because what the narrative that all these kids go by is you don't snitch, you don't tell, or
Mm-hmm.
because they're afraid they're going to be retaliated against. And what we're trying to say to them is, actually, being an upstander, you're actually getting somebody out of trouble. You're not getting
Mm-hmm.
them in trouble, because kids think if they're going to report it, they're going to get someone in trouble. And what we keep reinforcing to the students, you are actually helping to get somebody out of trouble. You are getting them help.
Yes.
And in the case with my son, the same thing. I don't know how many hundreds of students saw the attacks on him. Not one student said a word. Not one student reported it. Not one student said to their parent, Mom, Dad, Nate Bronstein is being attacked online. We need to tell his parents. If just one person, one child would have said something, my son would be here today.
Okay. So parents everywhere need to have this conversation with their
Need
kids.
to have this conversation that at this point, because bullying and cyberbullying can lead to such dangerous and deadly consequences, we need to talk to our children about, when you see, even if they're not your friend, even if it's someone that you don't like, when you see someone being harmed, you need to report it. You are helping to get somebody out of trouble. And the other thing that we're seeing too on the online world, and the kids are self-reporting this too, when they are seeing cyberbullying online or violence or hate speech, they're just scrolling right through it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even reacting anymore,
Mm-hmm.
because they're so desensitized to it. They're normalizing those visuals and that information.
Yeah.
And so they think that's normal. And so then those behaviors of aggressiveness, meanness, cyberbullying, hate, then they're translating that as normal behavior, whether it's in the real world or online. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we're teaching them in school is, when you see dangerous content or when you see someone being attacked online,
Mm-hmm.
you need to block it and you need to report it to the platform. You need to take it down.
Yes. Yes.
And that is a very important lesson. I don't think no parent tells this to their child. Or if it, so for example, a good analogy in the real world, especially now with all the violence going on in the Middle East and all of our children being exposed to this, it's the same idea. If you were to come home one day and there was graffiti on your home, right, with insults, speech towards you and your family, let's say it's like all over the walls and your door and your garage door, assuming you live in the suburbs, you're not just going to walk into your home and close the door and not do anything. This is what we tell the kids. What are you going to do? You're going to scrub it off. You're not going to leave that up there. And so how do you translate that when you are on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat? If you see harmful content or you see another child being attacked, you need to block the account. You need to report it to the platform. We need to get it off the internet.
Yeah.
That way we're all contributing to getting hateful content, violent content off rather than keeping it up. And the kids,
go ahead.
I see their reactions when we explain it to them this way. It's almost like they have this epiphany. They don't think about, oh, I never, because we all ask them, how many have you seen hate speech in the past 30 days? They answer these questions. And as the months have gone by, 100% reporting yes. Then we ask, what do you do? They just scroll right by. So we're trying to teach them to change that behavior, to modify their behavior and say, okay, I'm seeing something dangerous or harmful content. I'm going to contribute and I'm going to get that down. I'm going to take it down so it doesn't continue to be circulated.
Right. And I think that's a great step. And it's a way for them to anonymously do this, because I know a lot of teens don't want to seem like snitches and have their name attached to, telling on another kid. But I will say you when you report something on these platforms, it doesn't always get taken down.
Correct.
Because it's algorithms checking for it. It's not a person with a brain and with empathy reviewing the content, unless it's egregious. So we need some more legislation. We need some more regulation. I know there are a couple of bills that you are currently supporting. So can you tell parents what these bills are and what they would accomplish?
Sure. Well, the two pieces of federal legislation that are out right now is KOSA, which is the Kids Online Safety Act, which is a very important bill because that actually would put a duty of care on the social media platforms to make sure that their platforms are safer for our children. And just like you said, it would create a better system that when children are blocking and reporting, that dangerous content gets taken down. That would be one example of how this piece of legislation would help, by putting the responsibility on the platform, because accountability needs to be put in so many different categories, especially on the platforms. So KOSA would definitely be a good start for that.
Okay.
And then just this week, Sammy's Law has been publicly announced. I was actually in Washington, D.C. on Monday and Tuesday advocating for that law. And Sammy's Law, first I'll explain what it will do, and then I'll explain why it's even exists. But the premise of Sammy's Law is to allow parents to have the option to install third-party safety software on their devices and on their children's devices, so that when their children receive a threatening message or harmful content, the parent can be alerted of that, and then it gives the parent the opportunity to intervene and do what they need to do to make sure their child is safe. Right now, the problem is, specifically, of course, the two most, they're all dangerous, but if I had to rank them, Snapchat and TikTok, where so many children are being harmed, they will not open. They're refusing to open their API technology to allow parents the option to install third-party software to protect their children. They're just flat out refusing.
Wow.
So this law would create like a level playing field and would force all the social media platforms It's literally, from what I understand from the technology back end, all that the social media platforms have to do is like flip one switch. And then it would allow the third party security software to go in and feed into the platform and back to the parent's phone to say, to monitor that content. So, for example, in the case of my son, when he got that Snapchat that said, go kill yourself, I would have received an alert on my phone saying your son just received dangerous content, right? It's like a beep or like a banner across your
Yep.
phone. Like, you know, when there's a tornado warning, we get those messages on our phones. It's the same idea.
Okay.
So that's the purpose. That's the premise of Sammy's Law. And I've been fighting alongside Sam Chapman and Dr. Laura Berman. They lost their son, Sammy, when he was 16, 3 years ago, because he was contacted by a drug dealer on Snapchat who offered him a menu of pills. And he was at home at night during the pandemic. They were under lockdown, and he ordered a pill. The pill was delivered to his house by the drug dealer.
Wow.
This is in California. By the drug dealer, like a pizza, delivered to his house like a pizza.
Jesus.
Sam and Laura were upstairs sleeping, and Sam took the pill, and it was laced with fentanyl, and he died from fentanyl poisoning. And they found him the next morning. And this has happened over and over and over again. And again, so that's why it's called Sammy's Law. And so what we're all advocating for, again, in hindsight, if Laura and Sam had a third-party safety software on their phone, and the minute their son connected with the drug dealer and the pill menu came up, they would have gotten an alert. So imagine the type of intervention they would have had the opportunity to do.
Right.
And what I like about this bill a lot is that it's a choice for parents, right? If you don't want to put third-party safety software on your children's social media accounts because you think that they're fine, it's not going to happen to them, and they're responsible, fine. But for the parents who do want that, they should have that option. And the way I see it right now, until more legislation is put, or any legislation gets put on the accountability of the platforms, which again is going to take a while, it at least gives parents like a seatbelt for their children. If they're allowing their child on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, they're putting something into place that they can be alerted when their child is in harm's way and they can intervene. Because right now, government isn't doing anything. The schools are not doing a good job of protecting our children.
Right.
You know, when you go to a parent of a child who's bullying your child and you're saying your child is bullying my kid online, and that parent says, no, my child isn't, right? You're kind of taking all of that out of the equation, and it's empowering parents to take control of their own child's safety, at least in the interim until things keep progressing forward.
Yeah. Because it really, parents don't, it doesn't feel like we have a lot of options other than not let them on the platforms. That's feels like the only safe option.
Correct. And if I were to do it all over again in hindsight, I mean, if I had a young child today who was 7, 8, 9, 10, I would not let them on social media until they were 16. I would not. And to all you parents out there, this is coming from a parent who I have suffered the worst horrors that any parent could. You can't. I don't even have the words. I'm imploring parents to please listen to what I have, to what I've shared and what I've had to say, and please do not think that this would not happen to your child. This can happen to any child, to any parent. Nobody is immune to their child being harmed on social media. Nobody's immune to it.
Rose, thank you so much for having the strength to share. This is so important. I know that a lot of parents are going to hear this and are going to think twice about their decisions around letting their kids have social media, letting their kids have devices, and just having more open conversations about these topics with their children and the harms that will come their way when they have access to these platforms. Can you tell listeners where we can find out more about Buckets Over Bullying and support your work?
Sure, thank you. We have a website, bucketsoverbullying.org.
Mm-hmm.
We do have an Instagram account, and we just opened up a YouTube page where we share just content of our work. What I really am focused on in the upcoming year is continuing education on the harms of social media. So I'm hoping that more parents will take the time to first educate themselves, and then to then have these conversations with their children in the home, along with all the other conversations we're supposed to have. Don't do drugs, don't drink and drive, be kind, be respectful. And if your child, before you hand your child a digital device, talk to them, set boundaries and rules about how to behave on social media, what to do if you're being harmed, not to harm someone else, to pause, to check in on people. These are conversations that need to be had over and over and over again when parents decide to give their children access. And then we're going to continue to work on legislation, which is a very painful process. And then finally, there are many cases where families are in crisis, where their child is being harmed on social media and they can't get it to stop. They can't get the school to cooperate. They can't get the parents of the bullies to cooperate. They can't get the platforms to cooperate. So right now, until this mess is straightened out, my husband and I became essentially a bullying hotline in Illinois.
Wow.
After we went public with what happened to our son. But what I advise parents after they've tried to go through, the conventional routes of trying to ask for help to protect your child,
Mm-hmm.
at this point, my advice is to get legal help, is to find an attorney. And right now, that to make sure that your child is safe, you can file restraining orders against the parents of the bullies. You can file restraining orders against the bullies themselves. You can get copies of those to the schools. You can file police reports. At this point, when you've tried every traditional avenue and no one is helping you, get legal help to make sure that your child is safe. Do whatever you can. Do not hesitate, because at this point, that's all that we have. And I know right now there are a lot of attorneys out there who are also willing to help families on a pro bono basis. Understanding sometimes the barrier to getting an attorney is usually the cost, which is unfortunate. But when you are in crisis and your child's mental health has spiraled and you can't get the abuse to stop, get legal help.
I know the Social Media Victims Law Center is one resource that I've seen, and I'm actually interviewing Laura Marquez Garrett, who's an attorney at that firm. And so I will be asking her more about this topic and giving more resources to parents who need help. I think that was some incredible advice, because the avenues that you would think would be available and are legally liable to be available aren't always there and are doing the steps that they're supposed to be doing to protect our kids. So
through our organization, we are trying to build a national directory, a network of attorneys. We're working on that right now. So I'm hoping by the early next year on our website, we'll be able to have to list an attorney in every state who is available to families in crisis. So if a family anywhere in the country is looking for legal help or aid, they could come to our website and look it up and know who to call. Because I've gotten calls from parents from different states, and I kind of get stuck. So I think that would be ideal, is to build that network out when parents need help.
Okay. And that's bucketsoverbullying.org. Is that right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, Rose. Thank you so much for introducing us to Nate. He sounds like a wonderful boy. I commend him for reaching out to the school. He did so many things right, and he did not deserve this to happen to him. And I hope that through telling his story, I know that through telling his story, we are going to help other families avoid a tragedy like this. I hope that parents' eyes are wide open right now and that they take a moment to think about Nate and to think about all of the children that we've lost through social media harms and through cyberbullying. So Rose, thank you again for being here. I'm so grateful that you had the strength to share today.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. It means a lot to me.